In this lesson, we're going to talk about adding and subtracting polynomials. The first thing we're going to do is just go over a few definitions. Polynomials is just a broad term, and then we do have a few more specific names. So let's start with the specific names and then get to polynomial. So if you look to the chart off to the side, 4x is considered one term because there's no plus or minus between the 4 and the x, and a one term is called monomial. X plus 7, since there's a plus in between the x and a 7, those are considered two separate terms, and two terms is called a binomial. And then if you look at the third row, you're going to notice that there are three terms because there's two plus or minuses separating them. And anything with three terms is called a trinomial. And then once you get past three terms and you get into 4 terms, 5 terms, 6 terms, etc., then we just call that a polynomial. Okay, degree of a polynomial. Degree of the polynomial is the highest exponent. Now, you will be asked to write your answers for the polynomials in standard form. And standard form is when you start. So you start with the highest exponent and go to no exponents. So you're just going to work your way down in order. So for example, like x to the 5th, then x to the 4th, then x to the 3rd, x to the 2nd, x to the 1st, and then plain number. That would be considered in standard form. So on example number 1, they give you a polynomial and they want you to write it in standard form. So first thing, go through and look for the highest exponent. And the highest exponent is x to the 4th power. So I'm going to write that term first, 6x to the 4th power. Then I work my way down, so I look for x to the 3rd. So minus x to the 3rd. Then look for x squared, so minus 3x squared. Then look for x, so plus 7x. And then finally you end with your plain number that has no variable with it, and that is a minus 5. Okay, now when we are adding and subtracting polynomials, we want you to always write your final answer in standard form. So let's start with adding polynomials. Okay, in order to add polynomials, the first thing we kind of need to go over is what is considered to be like terms. So off here to the side, like terms. Like terms means that you have same variable with same degree. So only an x to the 3rd can be put with an x to the 3rd. Only an x can be put with an x. Only a plain number can be put with a plain number. All right, so once again, scan the problem for the highest exponent, which is x squareds. Are there any other x squareds? And you're going to say yes, so I'm going to underline both of those here. So positive 3x squared plus 1x squared. Add your coefficients together. So if I take 3x squared plus 1x squared, 3 plus 1 is 4x squared. Now you're going to notice I didn't change the x squared part. The only thing I changed was the coefficient in front. So now we look for x's, and I'm going to circle those. So I got a 4x and a positive 2x. So 4x plus 2x, well, 4 plus 2 is 6, and then keep the x the same. And then plain numbers. Looks like the only plain number we have is a positive 5. So I don't have anything to add to that, so I just leave that alone. And then this makes up my final answer. Now, sometimes you're going to notice the problems will have parentheses in them. Okay, so don't let the parentheses fool you. Just pretend like the parentheses are not there. And the reason we get to do that is because if you use distributive property and you distribute a plus sign, a positive times anything is just itself. So we just pretend like the parentheses are not there. So once again, scan for the highest exponent. And that's going to be x to the thirds. So I got 4x to the third plus 1x to the third, which will give me 5x to the third. Then x squareds, positive x squared. So that's positive 1x squared. And over here we have a minus 3x squared. So 1 minus 3 is negative 2x squared. Then we look for regular x, and we only have one regular x, and that is 7x, so I can't add anything to that, so we're going to leave it alone. And then we're going to look for our plain numbers, and our plain number, we only have one of those, and that is negative 5, so we're just going to leave that alone as well. And here's my answer. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and I want you to try C and D on your own. So when you look at the answer for C, you're going to notice that for the regular x, you would have 0x, which I just omitted from my answer. But if you left it as plus 0x, that's fine. Don't just say plus x, though, because that would be considered 1x. All right, moving on to the next one. Now, instead of adding, we are going to talk about subtracting polynomials. And for subtracting polynomials, these are always going to have parentheses in them. And here's the catch. When you distribute a negative or a minus sign, subtraction sign, whatever you want to call it, it does change things. Okay, because a negative times a positive is a negative. Or negative times a negative is a positive. So this time when you distribute, you will change. What will happen is you will change the signs of the second parentheses. So it will become a negative 3x squared minus 5x plus 8. So you'll notice here we just changed the signs of the second parentheses. And then I don't do anything to the first parentheses. I'm just going to leave it alone. Boom, write it down. Just don't write it down with the parentheses. And now we're just going to go back to adding like terms together. So start with the highest exponent. So 6x squared minus 3x squared. So 6 minus 3 is 3x squared. Plain numbers. I'm sorry, not plain numbers. X's, plain X's. So 3x minus 5x. So 3 minus 5 is negative 2x. Now we could do plain numbers. So negative 2 plus 8. So negative 2 plus 8 is positive 6. And we're done. So distribute your negative sign. So that's going to change the signs in the second parentheses. So negative 5x squared minus 4x plus 9. Leave the first parentheses the same. 4x squared minus 7x. Now combine like terms. So 4x squared minus 5x squared. So 4 minus 5 is negative 1x squared. And then negative 7x and negative 4x. Well, negative 7 minus 4 is negative 11x. And then my plain number, the only plain number I have here is 9. So plus 9. Now, in front of the x squared, you could write negative 1x squared, or if you wanted, you could go just negative x squared because it's understood to be a 1. So either way is acceptable. All right, once again, pause the video and you try C and D. So hopefully you came up with the same answers that I did. Now our last example for this one says find the perimeter of a shape. So the first thing we have to remember is, how do I find perimeter? Well, perimeter is adding all sides. And then with a rectangle, you need to remember that the top and bottom are the same. So I write down the top, and then I'm going to go plus, and I'm going to write down the bottom, which is the exact same thing. And then plus for perimeter. The left and right sides are exactly the same, so I'm going to write that down twice as well. So now I'm just going to go through and do like terms. So I'm going to put all my x's together. So 3x plus 3x is 6x. 6x plus 6x is 12x. And 12x plus 6x is 18x. Then plain numbers. 5 plus 5 is 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. And 7 minus 3 is 4. So my answer for the perimeter is 18x plus 4. And we're done.